everyone. Well, I'm recording from my new flat. I've moved in. I still have a few dramas, unfortunately, with my old place. I've got to go back and see my landlord today. He wants to get the carpets replaced. Anyway, so I've got to go see him this morning and sort all that out because I've got to keep paying rent on that place until he gets a new tenant in there. And so it's sort of my problem and in my best interests that we get everything resolved as quickly as possible. So fortunately, I just handed in my second assignment for my second university unit yesterday. My third assignment is due on the 28th of March. And then, of course, it rolls on to assignment 2 and assignment 3 in each unit, like, for the rest of the semester. It's hard, man. It's hard. Like, when I studied science way back in the 90s, you know, all of our grade, like 90% of our grade came down to the exam, and like that sucked. I mean, I didn't like that. I didn't like that model. I think the assignment model is much better, but you know, geez, these assignments, man, they really keep you busy, and I do not know how they expect us to handle all the coursework and the tutorial work and the reading and the assignments at the same time. I mean, I think you literally would have to be a full-time student with no other commitments and no other priorities to be able to do it all. And, you know, that's just not reality. And, you know, and as I've said to my counselor, when she asked me, like, what are my priorities? And I said, well, you know, my first priority is my spirituality, self-growth, self-improvement and recovery life. My second priority is staying connected with my social network and keeping my support network strong. And then my third priority is university. And so I sort of, and somewhere in there, I guess lumped into the first category also, you know, includes an element of self-care. And for me, self-care is, you know, hobbies, it's painting, it's, doing odd jobs around the place. I mean, now that I'm in my own place, I can, you know, drill holes in the walls and things and do silly things like that. Not just arbitrarily, of course. But, but I find all of that stuff very cathartic. I find it very enjoyable. It's funny because, like, you know, growing up as an only child and as the daughter of a man who didn't do any of that stuff, really. I mean, my dad had a whippersnipper, but he certainly never owned a drill. And if he did, he never saw him use it. It wasn't until I was like a much older, like I would think I was in my 30s at the earliest that I ever even held a drill, let alone owned one. But as soon as I did start doing that stuff for myself, like, I realized, like, number one, that I really enjoy it. Number two, that it's not that hard once you know what you're doing. I mean, I didn't have any formal instruction, at least not from anyone that knew what they were doing. But but trial and error is good enough. It's a bit messy. Anyway, yeah, so it's been crazy. I've been absolutely just busy out of my mind trying to handle all of this stuff. But I'm handling it. Just. So anyway, I thought I would do a video today about goals. And originally I was going to do a video about visualization, and I think I will come back to that topic of visualization. There's actually a lot of really, really good resources out there already about visualization, and so to an extent I don't want to tread over territory that has been trodden so extensively and so well by people who are really in probably a much better position to be talking about it. I do engage in visualization. I'll talk a little bit about it as I go through my how I go about goal setting. Um, but I haven't come up with yet a really effective visualization method for myself, because I'm not someone who can just close their eyes and imagine a beach or imagine anything. If I'm in a guided meditation and they say close your eyes and just imagine a safe, like a safe place, or a place where you feel, um, at peace or whatever. The only thing the only thing that ever comes to mind is back when I was sleeping in the back of my car, usually having fled from serious physical abuse. And I would get in my car and I would drive to the park and I would sleep in the back of my car. And it was so cozy and quiet, and just the relief of getting away from the torment and the abuse and the horror of that. But I don't think that's a very good example for a sort of meditating type thing. But so when they say, like, try to imagine that you're in a park, you're in a, I don't have a very good, like, visual. When I say visual, I mean like picture kind of style ability to visualize. So for me, my visualization exercises tend to revolve more around writing things down, making videos, making just audio recordings even of myself talking about things. And my experience looking into this subject, has essentially, like, reaffirmed for me that there's nothing wrong with those sorts of ways of achieving visualization. But I haven't come up with a formula yet that I feel really works. So I'll come back to that when I have. So for today, it's goals. And look, I know goals are probably a bit of a boring subject matter. I didn't set goals for a really long time. In fact, I was dead against it. Growing up as a kid, and then as a young adult, I encountered different people that had these goals, some more extreme than others. One of my very, very good friends, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30 kind of thing. One of my female friends, I'm going to be married with kids by the time I'm 25, and I guess just like hearing this sort of stuff, I just thought goals were kind of bullshit, really. I mean, and I just decided that I didn't need to have goals. I could just stumble through life, and when opportunities arose, if my instincts told me that it was a good opportunity, or if it was just abundantly apparent that it was a good opportunity, I would just roll with that, But through going through therapy and everything, it reinforced the idea that goal setting is actually a really good idea. And the more I've read about it, and the more that I've studied it and read books about people who have achieved good, solid personal growth, spiritual growth, and managed to overcome obstacles in their life, goal setting it's almost always a topic that is in there at some point. And so I now have goals. I have done for a little while now. I think they're a good idea, and I think they work. And when I say work, I don't mean they work as in they get you what you want, because goal setting, it's like that saying about the holiday, that getting there is half the fun. It's the destination is not always the be all and end all of the holiday. I'm thinking of National Lampoon's Vacation now for some reason. If you've seen that movie with Chevy Chase, it's a really old movie. They made two. The first one, they're traveling across America to go to a theme park called Wally World, and oh, it's a great movie. I mean, it's old. It's so old, and it's quite corny, but it's a great movie. Anyway, so yeah, so the whole thing with setting goals is not all about achieving them. It's about the process of getting your mind into a growth mindset. And a growth mindset is one in which we are believing that we can do things, in which we have strategies to try and, you know, move forward with things that we want to achieve. And even just identifying like things that where we want to go, who we want to be. You know, what do we want our life to look like? What do I want my life to look like in a year's time, 5 years time? You know, even in 3 months' time. You know, so goal setting for me has become something that I do on a regular basis. I embrace the SMART goal metric, which is, you know, like, I don't think you'll find many people talking about goals that won't refer back to the SMART thing. SMART is an acronym, of course. Everything's a bloody acronym. And it stands for specific. So in other words, the goal that you're setting needs to be specific. So not just, I want to be happy, because everyone wants to be happy, number one. But number two, happiness looks like different things for different people. You know, it's too wishy-washy to be a goal. That's an aspiration. You know, that's a sort of, you know, that's a hope. That's an aspiration. Specific goals are things like, I want to move my family into more affordable, stable accommodation, or I want to learn to play the guitar, or I want to read a book once, get back into reading books, you know. Those are sort of the example. So those are examples of more specific goals. So you can immediately see there that if I set the goal for myself of getting back into reading books, that it will be obvious whether or not I am achieving that goal based on whether or not I'm reading books. And which brings us to the M part of SMART, which is measurable. Now, I don't like to measure things, generally speaking. I find that the human experience is largely something that cannot easily be measured, and often we try to measure things that just should never be quantified. You know, we love to, like, you know, put a numerical value on things that are 50 Shades of Grey, you know, and then use that for some statistical blah blah, or for that matter, you know, in psychology, you know, if you go to the doctor because you're feeling a bit depressed in Australia, they'll do like, you'll do a test, and it's basically to evaluate your state of mental health, and it spits out a number at the end, and then that number is like, you know, then you could, because at the end, after, the doctor will then refer you for 8 sessions of psychology with a rebate from Medicare, and then at the end of that 8 sessions, you go back and you take the test again, and then, you know, the idea is to see whether or not the 8 sessions of psychology were helpful or not. It's probably put into place, honestly, to by essentially the government or the medical profession in association with, so that they can hopefully maintain the funding for subsidised psychology for mental health. However, who knows? No one ever sees those statistics. No one. I don't think that those statistics get published. I don't know that there's any actual hard data or studies out there showing that that people who go through their 8 sessions of government sponsored psychotherapy get better scores on their final test than they did on their first one. It's probably unpublished data, But anyway, so that's the sort of thing. I just don't think you can quantify someone's state of emotional well-being, or how depressed they are, or how anxious they are, or how autistic they are, for that matter. That's why they talk about the autism spectrum now, but they've gotten rid of more old-fashioned concepts such as high-functioning autism or Asperger's syndrome, and now it's just spectrum. So because everybody is different, and just because you may be, say, traditionally high-functioning in some ways, you may also exhibit symptoms that are extremely debilitating when it comes to other things. So even if you are high functioning, you may not be high functioning in every scenario. It may just be that you're high functioning in certain scenarios. So the whole idea of trying to categorize and quantify these things, I think, is just bullshit. And so, yes, measurable. You want to be able to measure your goals, but only in the sense that you want to be able to have some idea of whether or not you're making progress towards your goals. But that becomes very, very clear just as you go through the process of planning out how to achieve your goals. So the A in SMART stands for achievable. And this is probably the most important thing. This is the most important thing, because goal setting is an absolute exercise in futility if the goals that you are setting for yourself are not realistically achievable. Now, I do believe that most of us have the capacity to do things that we do not have the self-belief to think that we'll be able to do. And so I do think that it can be helpful to have one or two goals that are, let's just say, aspirational relative to your current, where you're at in life, because I think it's good to push yourself. I really believe that, it's, and when I say push yourself, I don't mean hard slog, staying up night after night. I'm not talking about brute force. I'm just talking about taking on things that you may never have even, like I said about before about learning guitar, right? I've picked up a guitar, I've strummed a guitar. I can't play a guitar to save myself. I would love to learn to play the guitar. I really would. That, for me, learning to play the guitar is a goal that I have. It's not actually on my current set of goals list, but singing lessons is. But it is something that I think that at a certain point in my life I will set that as a goal for myself, because I would love to be able to learn how to play a basic acoustic guitar. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy. I'm not looking to be the next Jimi Hendrix or Eric Clapton. I would just like to be able to pick the instrument up and make it sound kind of half decent. So I feel like, although for me, because I've never played a musical instrument aside from in primary school, the recorder, which at least in Australian primary schools, and I suspect this might be pretty ubiquitous across the world, music classes consist of recorder. And I guess the reason that they do this is because recorders are cheap. Sorry, I'm trying to work around my microphone, and it's really and look, it's a good microphone, but it's very bulky and it's very sort of, and it gets in the way of me expressing myself with my hands. Recorders are cheap, especially. I mean, a good, you can get a good recorder, which is like a wood carved one, and like, yeah, they're expensive, but you can get plastic ones, and they're dirt cheap. So they're cheap. They're relatively easy to learn. They're not complicated. The best recorder player in the world, probably, well, I shouldn't really say the best recorder player in the world, but like a good recorder player versus a beginner recorder player doesn't have that much additional like learning between and practice between them. So, and the recorder is also quite useful if you're trying to teach kids to read music and to know about musical notes and that sort of thing, because playing a simple G on a recorder, it's just cover one hole and blow, whereas to make a the equivalent, to play a G on other instruments is much more complicated. So the recorder was rolled out in my primary school. We did it all through. By the end of year 7, I was an ace recorder player. I played the Australian National Anthem at our assembly, at our final assembly. That's how good I was. Yeah. Anyway, but aside from that, I've never played an instrument in my life. And I've never had any lessons in musical instruments. And so it's been a long time since I played the recorder. And so for me, something like learning to play the guitar is quite an aspirational goal, because I would be starting from absolute scratch. I have basically no existing skill set or knowledge that would help me with it. And in addition, I don't own a guitar, right? So that's why it's not on my goal list at the moment. So your goals need to be achievable, realistic to your current circumstance. So only you know where you're at and what you're capable of. You should definitely not allow your negative self-talk and your depression or other mental health conditions to get in the way of you setting goals for yourself. I hear a lot of people, who are in a state of kind of depression say things like, oh, there's no point in making goals because for 3 days out of the week, I just can't even get out of bed, And my response to that is always, there are plenty of things you can do in bed. Read a book, but why not have that as a goal? That if that's your situation, then don't let it stop you. You can certainly write in a journal in bed. You can read a book in bed. You can exercise to a certain extent in bed. You can meditate in bed. So try to think a bit out of the box and don't let your lack of self-worth or self-esteem, or if you have a mental health condition like depression or anxiety, don't let it stop you from still trying to set goals. Just factor in that some things are going to be really difficult for you, and try to have 80% of your goals be things that you can do regardless of those things that hold you back, and then have 20% be things that you would need to in some way overcome some of your limiting parameters in order to achieve. Because I think that it's good to have, like I said before, I think it's good to have goals, a certain percent of our goals be aspirational things that aren't necessarily realistic, that are going to push us, that are going to take us out of our comfort zone, but are also going to expose us to brand new things that we've never done before. That it, and you know, it's remarkable. You never know what you can do until you try. Really. I mean, and I've seen this a million times before. So the R, SMART, or moving through the SMART acronym, the R is for relevant. I think this is, it's kind of dumb. I kind of don't like it when they decide to develop an acronym for something and then they try, and then they use the thesaurus basically to try and fit a word to a predefined acronym that they've already chosen, like SMART. So relevant doesn't really mean relevant in the sense of SMART goal setting. What it means is that the goal aligns with your values, it aligns with your passions, it aligns with your priorities. And this is probably the most important of all of these points. Everything that we do in our life should align with our with our core values. It should be something that we have at least a certain amount of passion or interest in, and it should be something that we are that is not going to place us in a moral dilemma, like that is not going to, that essentially is in alignment with our morals and our values. That's really important, because when you're doing things in life, and and this happened to me in my work, you know, it didn't start out that way. I didn't go into it that way, but it just sort of over the years it turned into that, where I was working in a job where I was doing things that really were not aligned with my morals, my values, and also were not making the best use of my skills. And I mean, it was horrible, and I burnt out and I walked away. I think that, like, living a life in accordance with our core values is the single most important thing that we can do in everything that we do, regardless of whether it's to do with goals and future plans, or whether it's just what we do when we walk down the street. You know, if you don't know what your core values are, get out a piece of paper, start making notes. I think I talked about core values already. I may do a whole video on them because they are really important. There is, however, a lot of resources online to help you with your core values. I mean, basically, to figure out what your core values are, just look at the people around you and the people that you admire and the people that you aspire to be like, and ask yourself, what is it about them that draws me to them, that makes me feel like they are someone that I would like to have the life of, or that I would like to be more like. Those are going to probably be your core values And then you may say, well, but that would just make me a hypocrite because, like, because they're really hardworking and I'm not hardworking at all. Well, just because you may not be working hard at the moment and by the way, hardworking is just a social construct, just like so many other things are. You may believe that you're not being hardworking at the moment in the societal kind of definition of hardworking. However, just because this is your state at the moment doesn't mean that it will always be that way. And also, it doesn't mean that it's not something that's potentially important to you. Especially if you're constantly like just ribbing on yourself because because you feel like you're lazy, or you're criticizing yourself, or someone else is criticizing you for that matter, or maybe a combination, for the fact that you are apparently not putting the effort in, that you're lazy, that you're not hardworking, that you're not invested, that you're not all of that kind of stuff. Like, first of all, please try not to be so hard on yourself. I know people who work stupid hard and they're not happy. So hardworking is not the be all and end all anyway. But that doesn't mean that it's not something that you could have as a core value if you feel like that is something that you, like I said, aspire to have, to be like. So figure out your core values, and then that will help you to determine whether your goals are relevant to you or not. And then finally, the T in SMART goals refers to time. And now this is another one that I'm, look, I like to just sort of, rather than saying, I'm going to get this done do this by this date with this deadline, I like to just sort of be a bit loosey-goosey about it, Maybe this year sometime I'll get singing lessons. No, I will. Oh, this year I reckon I will. I'll get singing lessons. That's been something I've been wanting. It's been something I've wanted to do for decades now. And no, I'll do it this year. But I'm not going to say I'm going to do it by April 1st or something ridiculous like that. I mean, to start with, I'm so snowed under with uni and all this other stuff. And secondly, classes are probably fully booked. You probably can't even get into a class until July. So, yes, set a time frame for your goals, but don't be too rigid about it, because that's just giving yourself another reason to potentially beat yourself up if you don't make it. And goal setting should never be about making yourself feel bad. It really isn't. This whole idea of having goals should never ever result in you feeling bad. It should only result in you having a growth mindset whereby you feel like you are able to do things that perhaps you've been putting off, or that perhaps there was certain obstacles in the way to achieving, or that are necessary, but you have been struggling, to get together the resources, whatever it may be. The fact is that if you set goals and you make detailed plans to achieve your goals, and you tick off not a single thing on that to-do list, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed from when before you set the goal. you should not beat yourself up for it. All that means is that you had a plan and it didn't work out. How many times in life has that happened? Every single major, like worldwide success story, CEO, super gazillionaire, pretty much bigoted, horrible, nasty man, especially the ones who, I know, I won't name names, but anyway, but I will throw man in there because they are often men. Most of these guys have had many, many, many unsuccessful ventures along their way to achieving massive success. I love to use Richard Branson as an example. He started with records, and then when he was making decent money with records, he decided to go a bit rogue, and he went all over the place. And Virgin was popping up. There was Virgin Virgin credit cards, Virgin mobile, Virgin flights, Virgin. He tried so many different things, and a bunch of them failed. A bunch of them failed hard, and he lost a lot of money on them. But because he's a smart man, and because he was already making a lot of money from his existing, from the ones that were making him money, he could afford to take the loss. So plenty of people have an idea, go for it, and it doesn't work out, and that's okay. If you don't have the sort of, I guess, self-esteem, personal resilience, if your resilience is low, your self-esteem is low or wavering, and you are also struggling with mental health issues, then I understand that the idea of setting goals and then having to accept that it didn't work out might seem like it is going to be just another thing that you can beat yourself up or that other people can criticize you for. That's why I suggest that at least initially with your goal setting that you do not talk to anybody else about it, that it's just a personal private thing that you do on your own, probably in your journal. I suggest the first step for goal setting is always going to be write them down. Now, sometimes these days I get so sick of the fact that my brain works way faster than my hand, and so writing just frustrates me. So I have taken to making audio recordings on my phone, or video recordings on my phone, or video recordings on my computer, just to get thoughts out, just to get things out, The best thing is now you can get it just transcribed, and the transcriptions aren't perfect, but they're good enough. Look, I tell you what, the transcriptions of the audio recordings I take on my phone are much easier to read than stuff that I write in my journal, where it just turns into just scrawl because my brain's going so fast my hand can't keep up, and I'm getting frustrated with that. That's probably something I need to work on that, actually. But anyway, okay, so write them down or get them recorded in some other fashion. And try initially maybe just do a couple of shortish term goals, so like next month or 3 months. Try to do a couple of medium term goals, sort of like next for with this year sometime maybe. And then try maybe to have one which is a longer term goal, which is like next 3 to 5 years. That's plenty to start with. That's plenty. And then you're going to do action plans. Now, this is kind of the boring, dredgy, lame part of it. but it's also the key to actually being able to achieve your goals, because anyone can set a goal for themselves, like, I'm going to take singing lessons this year. But if I just do that, if I just say that, I could tell all my friends I'm going to do that, and it doesn't mean it's going to happen unless I actually go through the process of saying, all right, so what do I need to do to achieve that goal? Well, first of all, I need someone to teach me to sing. Now, the University of YouTube has a reasonable number of resources on this, and I've actually watched quite a lot of those tutorials. However, I feel like I need a live interactive coach, vocal coach, and I would like to do it in person, and I would actually really quite like to do it in like a group setting, because I find that, yeah, like I would like not a huge group, right? I'm not going to join a choir. Oh, no. But I feel like some sort of vocal training that's done in small to medium groups, by someone who can sing really well and has some training, and also has some knowledge in how to get the best out of someone's voice. I need to find that. I need to find that class. I need to book myself in. And then I need to go, right? And it can't just be, and not just one class, like, you know, I don't want to go just a one-hit wonder thing. This is going to be like 2, 3, 4 lessons, I would say, hopefully, at least, because I'm serious about this, you know? Like, I'm not serious about becoming like, you know, the next friggin' Katy Perry, but I love to sing. I sing all the time. I sing all the time, and my voice isn't terrible, but it's really not that great either. And I know that it could be better. I know that with a little bit of instruction on how to get the best out of my voice, it could be better. And that's all I want. That's my goal. That's my goal. My goal is to get vocal coaching, to learn how to get the best out of my voice, and also how to, all of the tricks, like I've seen on YouTube, you stand up, engage the diaphragm, all all that stuff, so that's my goal, and I'm going to do it this year, right? So that's just one example. So write them down. So for whatever your goal may be, that was just my one example. You want to make an action plan that literally is step by step things to do that you need to do in order to achieve the goal. Pretend that you're writing it for someone else if it helps. Pretend that it is not for you, but that you're writing it for your teenage son, or that you're writing it for your husband or your ex-husband. No, don't pretend that you're writing it for your ex-husband. It might get kind of ugly. Like your mother, father, whomever, a friend, of course. It's got to be like literally like, okay, if the goal is like, let's say, for example, that the goal is to start reading more books. Well, step number 1 is, do I have books to read, or am I at the stage now where I don't even own any books anymore because it's been so long since I've read? Well, if you don't have books ready to go, then you're gonna need to go and get a book. Don't go overboard, and please just go to the library and borrow them for free. Don't go and pay for them, because they're really expensive. And community libraries here, at least here in Australia, are great. They're great. And don't go and get Dostoevsky or bloody E.M. Forster. Don't go for the literature section, which are proliferated with very good books that are very hard to read. Equally, don't go for the really easy to digest just page turner like Jodie Picoult stuff, because I mean, even look, I'm not dissing on Jodie Picoult. She's made an amazing career. I've read a number of her books. They're quite engaging. They're good to read on a plane. If you want to get back into reading, try to go somewhere in the middle. Try to go somewhere in the middle, like something that is, is of interest to you. When you pick it up and you read the back, you read the sleeve on the back, that's not too fat, but not too thin. And do check out the size of the text inside, before you get the book out of the library, because some books are printed in really small single-space text, and then other books are printed in quite large, like double-space text. And depending on how good your eyesight is, the last thing you want is to get this book home and then realize that you can't even read the bloody thing because the print is too small. And get soft cover, not hard cover, because hardcover books are hard to read in bed. All right. So you get the idea. Hopefully, you want to make. So the goal is, I want to read more books. Step 1 is go to the library, get a library membership. Step 2 is find a book. Ask the librarian's recommendation if necessary. I mean, librarians are great. You need a 3-year degree to become a librarian these days. The Dewey Decimal System is like fairly complicated, but that's not. They learn. I mean, they are enthusiasts. Most librarians will have familiarity with almost every bloody book in their library. They're amazing. So get a recommendation if that helps. And don't be shy. Tell them, like, I haven't read a book in a long time, and I used to read quite a lot. And these are the type of books that I like. And I want to get back into reading, but I don't want to borrow a book that is just going to then like put me off immediately again because it's too hard to follow the plot, or it's boring, or it's over wordy, or etc. So get a book, take it home, and then schedule reading time. That's step 4 in your plan. Schedule time for reading. Now, a lot of people read just before they go to sleep at night. That's all well and good if reading doesn't put you to sleep. I used to do this all the time. And then I would wake up in the morning and the book would have fallen off the bed, and I would have to find where I was up to in the book. And then I would have to go back to the last bit that I could remember reading, which was usually like, I suspect, I imagine my eyes were still scanning words for quite some time after I was no longer actually taking it in. I think like the idea of like a nice like lunchtime, half an hour reading a book is nice, or afternoon cup of coffee if you've got, if your work allows for that. Or go to bed early and do it then go to sleep, but don't necessarily like do it as a way to get yourself to sleep, because that's not a very effective way to read a book. It's a very effective way to get to sleep, but it's not a very effective way to read a book. Anyway, and then when you've read the book, tick, 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 and reward yourself. Because this is the next thing, it's not actually the next thing in my list, but it's on my list anyway. When it's really important with making plans and with setting goals and achieving them, or even not necessarily achieving them, but making substantial progress towards them, especially if our goals involve overcoming major hurdles that scare us. You need to be rewarding yourself along the way. And when I say that, I'm not talking about a $5,000 shopping spree, at Louis Vuitton or whatever. I'm just talking about like just a small, just just a very small, doesn't even have to be a monetary reward. You know, it might just be like shut the kids out for half an hour and take a bath if you've got lucky enough to have a bath in your home, or or get a babysitter for the night so you and your husband can go out for dinner. Reward yourself in some way, because it's important that we reinforce that we're proud of ourselves, because we set out on a plan to do something, and we've made substantial progress. And believe it or not, like, it sounds so hokey, but like neurobiology backs up that this shit actually works. This shit actually works. And like motivating factors in psychology and rewards are extrinsic motivating factors, are a hugely important driving force in getting people to do things they don't want to do, in keeping people doing things they don't want to do, and also in getting people to engage with those things in a more meaningful way, so that hopefully they actually stop disliking it quite as much as they did, and figure out that it's not as bad as they thought it was, and maybe, in fact, they could be quite good at it, and it could be quite fun. So reward yourself. So when your goals, as you're working through your plans to achieve your goals, keep note of how you're going. When you hit obstacles, I might have to do a whole lesson on that. If you hit a major obstacle and you don't believe that you can easily overcome it, too hard basket. Immediately send it to the too hard basket, and don't worry about it for the moment. Don't let it get to you, because this happens all the time. Because we can't predict the future, and we can't know how hard something's going to be until we start trying to do it, right? So if something is proving to just not be within your capability, or if something is in your capability, however, external factors have come into play that mean that it is now just not something that you have the time for, the energy for, the money for, the enthusiasm even for, put it in the too hard basket, right? You can have a literal too hard basket, and you can also have a virtual too hard basket. You can put it in both. You want to be flexible with your goals. This is the next thing, is that if I set the goal for myself to, let's say, repaint or renovate my kitchen, right? So my plan might be something like, first of all, go out and look at kitchens, because let's face it, like, nobody gets cabinet makers. I'm sorry, cabinet makers. I would love to employ a cabinet maker to come in and like redo my kitchen, but it's just not financially feasible anymore. So, you're going to be going to all the stores that sell the modular, like, prefabbed, whatever, laminate kitchens. You're going to be checking them all out. You're going to be getting the prices. You're going to be getting the quotes. You're going to be looking at all the gizmos and the gadgets and the different things that they can offer. And it's going to be really overwhelming. And you're going to take them home and you're going to splash them all out over the kitchen bench, and then you're just going to say, oh, too hard basket. No, but so you want to be a little bit flexible. So it might be that you do exactly what I just said. And then once you've been to all these places and you've seen, and there's a lot of options out there, like, even in Perth, like, there's a lot of options for modular kitchens. You might just be like, oh, I can't afford it realistically, but also it's too big of a project to take on right now. So it's going in the too hard basket. Alternatively, you could just adapt your goal. So maybe rather than renovating my entire kitchen, maybe I might just look at painting my existing cupboards and changing the hardware, changing the handles. That can like totally transform the look of a kitchen relatively cheaply, relatively easily, and I can do it all myself. And it'll be fun. Fun for me. Or you might look at taking on just the sink, just the kitchen sink. The kitchen, you might have one of those awful kitchen sinks that's just one basin and it's way too small, and you don't have a dishwasher, and so you're doing 5 loads of dishes every time you're washing just after one meal. Oh, I've had so many of those. So you might say, well, okay, look, I'm not going to do my whole kitchen, but I am going to get a better kitchen sink. I'm going to get the one I want. And I'm going to get the fancy tap while I'm at it. And so adapt your goal, right? Next thing is persistence. I'm not going to talk about that because I think that we all know about that. But basically, it is important not to give up at the first hurdle that you get to. It is also important not to give up on your goals because other people or other mechanisms in your life suggest to you that it's a bad idea. Some people can be very unduly influenced, unfortunately, by bad advice, or maybe not bad advice, but just by advice, often unsolicited advice, from people who speak with great authority, even if they have no real basis for speaking with great authority, who will say to you, "Oh my goodness, don't do that. There is no chance that you can achieve that goal." And it puts a seed of doubt into you. And even though you've got this plan that seems achievable, and you may have even started to do a couple of things on this plan, and you're looking at your plan and you're thinking, I don't see why I can't do this. But you've got someone, who in some way is an authority figure for you, or is maybe just someone that you know that is very opinionated and likes to tell people how things are. And they're just telling you point blank, don't bother. It's a waste of time. You'll never get there. Do something different. And it's cast a seed of doubt. This is where resilience comes in to a certain extent, and it's where self-belief comes in to a certain extent. And I know that self-belief and resilience are not things that we are just naturally born with. I know that these are both things that we struggle with. Women who have gone through trauma in their lives, especially in a domestic setting, tend to be very resilient, actually. However, personal resilience, maybe not quite so much. And self-belief, where's that? What even is that? By the end of getting out of a traumatic DV relationship, no self-esteem, no self-worth, no self-belief. If anything, you are lucky to get out alive, number one. Number two, with enough hope that things can get better, that you even are willing to engage in therapy programs, listening to this podcast, whatever it may be. Self-belief is something that some people, seem to have quite a lot of from quite a young age, and a lot of people will struggle with their entire life. And persisting with things really is all about having a bit of self-belief. But the good thing about self-belief, and then this is why the goal setting thing I feel is important, and why I feel like it is important to persist past those, perhaps those people that tell you that you shouldn't do it, or those things that pop up that all of a sudden like make you have to change your course of action, that, and and question things, that, because it builds our self-belief when we manage to push past those things. I mean, isn't it just the best feeling ever when some asshole friggin' tells you that you can't do something, and then you just go and friggin' smash it out? And even though they're not there, they're long gone, and you wouldn't contact them anyway, even if you knew how. But yeah, you just go and smash it out, and then you just stand there with the grinning like a Cheshire cat, thinking, "Fuck that asshole for telling me I couldn't do it. Look, I just did it." It's the best feeling ever. It's the best feeling ever. And so this the whole goal setting thing can help give you that sense of accomplishment. And so it is important to persist. It is important still to always be realistic, and like I said, and it is important to be flexible. However, it is also important to not give up at the first sign of trouble. And finally, there's the reflection part. So whether you achieve your goals or not, whether you make it 80% of the way to your goal, whether you make it 20% of the way, whether you never even get off the ground, you want to periodically look back at your goals that you set for yourself and think about maybe why it was that you didn't ever bother to do anything to work towards them. I mean, you made a plan for how to execute that goal. What why exactly was it that you didn't do anything on that plan? It might be that you just didn't have the time, because shit takes time and a lot of us are very, very time poor, and that's perfectly okay. That just means that goal needs to be rolled over maybe to next year, and then hope that you have a bit more time next year. Or maybe it means that you need to reprioritize your time a little bit, which can be a very, very hard thing to do, especially if you have young children. But I tend to believe that, everybody can make time for things if they're really willing to sit down and look at how they spend their time and look for ways to slot in me time. And this is me time. these are your goals, these are your plans. These are things that you are doing for yourself, for your self-worth, for your self-growth, for your personal journey. And you need to be finding time for those things, for things relating to that in your life. Always. Periodically reflect on your goals, on your plans, how you're doing, whether you're ticking things off, or not, like how, and you may get halfway through, a plan to achieve a particular goal, and then just realize that that the goal was just not anything that you actually really care about, because, like, as I said before, like as with like taking a holiday, often the journey to get there is more fun than the destination. And So you may well find yourself along the road to somewhere and then realize that that end place is not even worth pushing forward to. And that's fine. That's great. That's great. That's great. Because now you can move on to somewhere else. And maybe you can, the first 5 things that you did towards that goal, you can fork that off to something that's maybe related, similar. Remember, I'm sure the Robert Frost poem, a road diverged in a wood, a path diverged in a wood, and I took the one less trodden, and that has made all the difference. That has nothing to do with what I was just saying. All right, this video is too long. I'm going to go, but I hope you learned something today. I hope you all have a nice weekend. It's Saturday morning here in Perth, Western Australia. I am hopefully going to get another episode up this week, and then I'm back in assignmentville for university. But yeah, and thank you to the first person who left a comment on one of my videos. It did happen to my auntie. But yeah, please, if you are watching my videos and you are enjoying the content, or even if you're not enjoying the content, please, I would love more than anything. I mean, subscribe, yes, absolutely, please. I would love that. But more than anything, I just would love to get some feedback on whether or not you guys think that these videos are worthwhile. I mean, am I adding something to the space that is fresh and new, or am I just essentially just treading over material that is better trodden over elsewhere by people who are more informed, who have more qualifications? I don't know. I'd love to get that feedback. Anyway, okay, all right, I'm going to go now. Have a great weekend, everyone, and I will see you all soon.